always curious about things, and I work across IT and so-called OT environments in my career and in my writing life last several years. And I'm curious about one thing. Why do open systems work in IT, and yet they have not made a really successful transition to operational technology or OT? This is Gary. This is another Gary on Manufacturing podcast. And as always, over the last several years, I really appreciate my sponsor. This podcast is brought to you with the support of Inductive Automation. Discover a whole new perspective on industrial automation with Ignition, packed with innovative features for the modern control system, like unlimited licensing, high-powered tags, mobile-first flexibility, and an intuitive built-in design environment. Ignition supports enterprises of any size or industry. See all Ignition has to offer at inductiveautomation.com. Interesting that the inductive automation people point out mobility, because this week that I'm recording this is Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. I am not in Barcelona. I'm at a coffee shop in Hampshire, Illinois, down the road from my house. So anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Orlando for the ARC forum, and I first started going to these in 1998, and for the first quite a few years, there was an open standards organization called OMAC. OMAC still exists, although I hear from them seldom anymore. But they were trying to do an open modular architecture controller, OMAC, and then they eventually changed it. They were trying, one of the guys that really instigated the whole thing was trying to do a standard PCI or compact PCI computer with standard slots, standard I/O, and you could dump anybody's software in there, hopefully IEC 1131. And he was trying to get under or out from under the so-called thumb of Rockwell Automation that he felt was charging them too much money and could just raise prices at will, and not always played with other things that he might want to put in his production lines. That actually didn't exactly work. What came out of OMAC was really something called PACML, which was a standardized interface for packaging machinery, so that an operator could look at a screen and know what the different things were, start and stop, and certain things, and so on down the line. That was pretty successful. And I'll never forget the time about 3 years after I heard about all this, some guy showed up with an OMAC controller, and he had a little compact PCI based computer and some software that ran 1131, or now called 61131. And I looked at him and I said, "Hey, Ken, this chassis that you've got doesn't use standard compact PCI, so therefore you can't plug in any CPCI card." And he packed it up, went away. I never heard from that whole thing again. It's just an example of trying to get an open system into operation technology. So in 2016, I heard about this event coming up, or this organization and new technology, and it was called OPAF, Open Process Automation Forum. And it was instigated by ExxonMobil, who faced the situation where they needed to upgrade their technology across, upstream, downstream, pretty much the whole thing. And it was going to cost a fortune because they had to rip and replace all the existing automation suppliers stuff. And, rewiring I/O and sending all the wires, sending across the process plant is very expensive. And then, just the new controller is bad enough with new software and so on. And so they were facing huge expenses, and some of the engineers there thought, why are we so hostage to all this? And why can't we have something more open, something that we could upgrade and keep current without having to rip and replace everything? And why can't we have some standardized I/O and so on? And so they started and then they under the auspices of the Open Group, they started this forum. That was 2016. I remember talking with them as part of a group from an organization called Mimosa, that's a standards organization in the machinery maintenance market. And we were just curious if part of the standard of Mimosa um, could be part of the standard of standards that OPAP was working on. And so, this is 2023, so that was 7 years ago. And I've had meetings every year, well, except the year that they skipped because of COVID. And and they have made what I consider remarkable progress. I met with two of the leaders of OPAP when I was at ARC a couple of weeks ago. Um, Mohan Kalyan Raman, I'm sorry about that, Mohan, and Ryan Smelter. And they wanted to brief me on what was going on. And then a little bit later on, I said in the sessions, very popular session. There were over 200 people that went in this, and there were at least four, if not six tracks going on at the same time. So everybody was divided up, and yet there was a lot of interest in the updates from OPAF, or the Open Process Automation. So they have a standard called OPAS, OPAS 2.1, and that's the latest version. And they consider this now a stable version that suppliers can build to, which is good. They're now working on several things: conformance requirements and conformance testing, so that suppliers can get a seal of approval, if you will, that they meet OPAS standards. They're working on security guidelines, which are, of course, very important, and also implementation or adoption guidelines to help people adopt these open systems. They've done test beds. They've done a pilot project. ExxonMobil especially has done a lot of this based on suppliers whose product can't be certified yet because there's no certification standard, but they would meet OPAS 2.1. And so ExxonMobil is going from the test bed pilot stage into a more rigorous implementation and test. Test beds. Let's see, a few companies have scheduled test beds to require. ExxonMobil's proceeding with what's called a field trial. It includes DCS and PLC. They're commercially available, compliant with OPAS 2.1. And the project includes a single operator, a single console, 2,500 I/O, and 100 control loops. So it's a pretty decent test of the standard and what will work in actual use. There's ongoing work that the OPAP organization is working with OPC Foundation for the new field exchange standard from OPC UA, and also very importantly working with NAMUR, NAMUR, and in English, in American English, ZVEI in Europe, to coordinate with standards of those European organizations. Like I said, this has been going for quite a while, and I never really thought they'd get this far as a firm standard and something they can work with. So the question still becomes: there's two things that's got to happen. One, suppliers have got to build products to this. Now, Yokogawa has been part of this for quite some time, but I haven't heard much from Yokogawa as far as actual products. An early exponent of this was, or proponent, I should say, was what's now Schneider Electric, and it traces back its roots to Foxborough. So Foxborough Schneider Electric has devoted a lot of people and time and effort into this. And ABB also has devoted a lot of time. ABB has put out a white paper about, open automation and what they saw as the future. And I've written about it at the Manufacturing Connection. You could search, hit the little, search button at the top of my site and search that out. And so ABB, Schneider Electric, Yokogawa has been watching, and they participate usually. And we'll see how that goes. Interestingly enough, Emerson just put out a paper, and it had their future of automation. And the interesting part was it had an awful lot of the ideas from the open process automation group. But Emerson is decidedly not a part of that, which goes back to our original problem in operations technology. You can't put in open standard for whatever reason, and this is the second issue, is users have to demand it. They have to put it in their specs, but more than put it in their specs. I know one company has put some of this open stuff in specs, but that's corporate, but they can't enforce each plant to buy the corporate standard. So if you can't enforce it and the buyers don't buy it, suppliers won't supply it. And for whatever reason, people get locked into a supplier and they don't want to change, and the supplier likes to keep everything. Their argument is, if I build everything, it all works together better. And rather than if I piece together parts from different suppliers. But that's obviously, for those of us, I mean, it's been a few years since I've actually worked in the industry. But when I actually worked in the industry, the suppliers I was familiar with, their parts didn't always work together, even from the same company, because it was different divisions and internal stuff and whatever. And so, those of us who have an end user bent know that that's not always true, that things work together simply because they come from the same supplier. And so often you've got a best in class component of some kind you want to use, and if it doesn't connect, I'm out of luck, as they say. So there's still work to do. There's still a long way to get conformance tested products out there and getting end users. Now, ExxonMobil is really deep in this. Other end users are looking at it and have been part of the standard setting operation and process. And so we'll see how it goes. It's got to, by next year, we should really see some stuff going on. We'll have a report back from ExxonMobil's field test and so on. And we'll see how it goes. My belief is, market is consolidating and things are going to have to open up. It's kind of the way a market goes. If you look at IT, things opened up when they brought out the LAMP stack, but already there was a lot of consolidation in that with the enterprise IT space. And end users were basically saying, I need to piece together stuff. I need to be able to get things, and I need to be able to load my whatever software and my Kubernetes and all this stuff. And I need all this open stuff to work. And I think at some point, we're seeing a lot of consolidation, and we have seen, and things are going to have to open up. Users benefit so much from open systems, but it's just been really slow happening in our manufacturing and industrial space. So anyway, that's an update actually from ARC, my last podcast. And if you look at it on YouTube, I was sitting in the lobby of the Renaissance Hotel at SeaWorld at the ARC forum, and here I am back at a coffee shop. But anyway, by next year, I think we'll see a lot more action on this and see where it's actually going to go. A lot of work has been done. They've really put together a nice package. We'll see how end users are going to drive this. So thanks for listening. This is Real Manufacturing. And once again, I'd like to thank my sponsor, Inductive Automation. This podcast is brought to you with support from Inductive Automation. Discover a whole new perspective on industrial automation with Ignition, packed with innovative features for the modern control system like unlimited licensing, high power tags, mobile first flexibility, and an intuitive built-in design environment. Ignition supports enterprises of any size or industry. See all Ignition has to offer at inductiveautomation.com. Ignition 8.1.25, the latest version of Ignition, features the highly anticipated IEC 61850 driver, leveraging the Triangle MicroWorks 61850 library. This new driver boosts your power monitoring prowess and integrates with practically any piece of IEC-enabled electrical equipment. Thank you. Have a good day. Go out and be kind to someone.